Brawl Esports announced the maps that are going to be in rotation for this upcoming season, and there's obviously a few things to talk about right here, but to me, the biggest one is that Siege has been removed from the rotation entirely. And this has me thinking, how much longer until Siege is removed from the game? Let's talk about it today. Alright, Jam fam, I'm gonna be straight with you. I think Siege is one of the best modes in the entire game, and I'm not gonna lie, seeing it be removed from competitive has me a little bit annoyed, and I also think it's really bad for the game overall. But there's a few reasons for that, and before we talk too much about what I think about it being removed from competitive, I just want to walk through Siege's history and talk about why I think it's been nerfed so much and why I think it's not gonna last too much longer in the game. Alright, let's get into it. Siege was added back in February of 2019, and at the time, it was the go-to mode for high-skilled players to push their brawlers because it rewarded twice the normal amount of trophies due to matches being twice as long. It was an intense experience, and it felt really good to go on long win streaks in the mode because you push your brawlers twice as fast. But the opposite could also be said, and you could lose a ton of trophies just as quickly. Because of this, average players tended to avoid the mode entirely, and because of that, the mode went underplayed. So, in June of that year, Supercell decided to cut the length of matches down to 2.5 minutes, and they nerfed the trophy reward back to the standard of everything else. I think Supercell made these changes to try to entice players into playing the game mode more often, because like I said, average players didn't want to play the mode because they didn't want to lose 16 trophies in one match, so I think this was Supercell's way of addressing that complaint. However, the damage had already been done. It was already set in as people's least favorite modes, and no amount of rebalancing was going to fix that. The next big change to Siege came in May of 2020, and this made it so that the bot would no longer focus on brawlers that had their respawn shields. For a long time, a legitimate strategy in Siege was to tank the boss in the middle of the map, do a little bit of damage to it, but end up dying, and then tank the boss again upon respawn when your respawn shield was still up. This worked amazingly well for high HP brawlers that could buy a lot of time on defense for their team. This change killed that strategy, and at the time, I felt like it was a good change for the mode, and I understand that the devs felt like dying should be a legitimate punishment and not a strategy to abuse. However, looking back at it, I think this change swung the games too far in the direction of the team that won the first spot. One push games became a lot more common, and even if you didn't win the game on your first push, you were still able to do a decent amount of damage to the Ike, and were able to hold control for the next round of bolt collections. And if those two changes weren't enough, a year later, Supercell put all the game modes that weren't Gem Grab, Brawl Ball, and Showdown on a 2-hour rotation. Now, with Siege being one of the least popular modes, and it only being available to play for a few hours a day, it's played even less than it was before. The next big change to Siege was that in August of 2021, Supercell decided to remove Siege from Power League entirely. Frank explained a few weeks after they made this change that the major reasons for this was that they had received feedback that Siege was the hardest mode to play with randoms, and it was the highest termination rate among Power League games. Now, I feel like this was a culmination of all the problems Siege has had, and it came to a natural head here. Think about it, Siege was the least liked mode among average players because they didn't want to go on long losing streaks and tilt their brawlers twice as fast. And the trophy change came way too late, and the mode's reputation was already ruined. Then they made a balance change that put too much value on the first spot, and they made the mode only available for a few hours a day. So players got out of practice with the mode they didn't like, so when it came up in Power League, they just left the match instead of playing the game. And now, here we are today, Siege is being removed from esports entirely, and I think this is going to be the final nail in the coffin for Siege. You now have the least played mode removed from all major aspects of the game, it's only available to play for a few hours a day, and it's not even in esports anymore. And for all these reasons, I really don't see how Supercell justifies keeping it in the game much longer. Now, let's talk about why I don't like this change. And while I do feel like Siege has been mishandled quite a bit, it's not my biggest gripe with the mode. I understand why Supercell made the changes they did pretty much every step of the way. No, my biggest concern about Siege being removed is actually centered around the game getting stale at the highest level of play in both terms of meta and the game modes actually being played. And let me explain. Siege was a mode you could realistically play a lot of brawlers, and the maps were pretty diverse. You had real open maps like Bot Drop and Factory Rush that favored brawlers like Bell, Piper, and Byron, brawlers that had longer ranges. Then you have more wall-heavy maps like Some Assembly Required, and you can play tanks like Frank, Bull, and BB, as well as throwers like Barley, Sprout, and if you really want, you can even play Mortis as a counterpick sometimes. I feel like Siege is a much more diverse mode than people give it credit for, and now you're replacing Siege with Knockout, a mode that's very similar to Bounty in both playstyle and meta. In the last year, the game has definitely started moving toward more long-range oriented metas. You see this in modes like Gem Grab and Heist, where these modes were either much more diverse or they favored tanks entirely. Now you have maps like Hard Rock Mine, Shooting Star, Safe Zone, and Bell's Rock where you're only going to see long-range brawlers. And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I've been feeling this for a while, and I feel like more than half of the roster never gets a chance to shine at the highest level of play. And honestly, that's a little sad in my opinion. So let me clarify my complaints here, because that was a little bit of a long explanation about why I'm annoyed with the game. I feel like Siege is a mode that brings nice diversity to the game for both players and spectators. Supercell is replacing Siege with Knockout, that, as a mode, plays very similar to Bounty in both strategy and meta. This, with the newer maps that have been added to the game in the last year, will possibly lead to very same feeling metas and less exciting play overall, in my opinion. So like I said way back at the beginning of this video, Siege is one of my favorite modes in the entire game, and seeing it be replaced with Knockout has me very annoyed and maybe a little sad. I'm gonna say this now and very clearly, I think Supercell will remove Siege entirely before the end of the year. As I said before, I don't see how Supercell can justify keeping it in the game much longer. The play rates are abysmal, and honestly, they've removed it from every aspect of the competitive side of the game that there's really no point in keeping it in the game at this point. But what do you guys think? Do you like this change, or are you like me and you don't think it's a good change for the game overall? And what do you guys think about the metas becoming a little stale over the last year? Let me know down in the comments, because I'm really interested in what you guys think about this as well. And if you made it this far, clearly you liked the video, so tell the algorithm that you liked the video and hit the like button. And if you really liked the video, consider dropping a sub as well. But anyway, that's gonna do it for me on this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.